So the next segment, we have the pleasure of Michael Traill, founding Chief Executive of Social Ventures Australia. And that role follows 15 years as co-founder and executive director of Macquarie Bank's venture capital arm, Macquarie Direct Investment, which sounds very impressive indeed. So Social Ventures Australia provides seed funding, commercial advice and business tools to innovative social ventures to help them find solutions to some of Australia's intractable social problems. Michael's also chairman of independent financially advisory organisation InfoChoice, and he's a director of the Indigenous Capital Fund, the John McLean Foundation and the Opera Australia Capital Fund. He's a non-executive director of Australian Aluminium Fisheries, Dimension Data Australia, Hardy Grant Publishing and Space Health Clubs. And he holds a BA Honours from Melbourne University and MBA from Harvard. Not only that, in 2001 he received a special ministerial award for service to New South Wales wheelchair sport. So what a fantastic background, Michael. And he's going to talk to us about work-life balance. A growing number of employees feel there's a fundamental gap between their work in the corporate world and the world of making a difference to the lives of others. Many want to find a work-life balance and make a genuine contribution to society, but don't know where to start. So it looks as though we're going to be in for a really informative and very valuable bit of guidance today. I certainly want to hear some of those solutions. So over to Michael.
Thank you. I think, actually, can I just keep this pretty informal given the numbers? And don't feel that if you want to walk out at any point, that's fine. I think in this forum and in this format to have a conversation about some of the stuff that we're on about might be a bit more fun and a bit more relaxed, because I suspect there might be a few people who've got confidence burn out anyway. So, can I just get a quick sense of who everybody is and where you come from?
I'm Robin Smith from AGL, Australian Investor.
Yeah.
And Oscar from Let Loose. Ed Richards from Earthwatch.
How are you?
And I'm the co-patricia from the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. I'm Wendy Bloom, Women Power Seminars.
James Lewis, I'm helping on the CSR side of support team.
I'm David Sequeira, I'm an artist.
We've got a very interesting and eclectic mix of people. I would be very presumptuous of me to pretend that I have anything particular to offer on work-life balance. I mean, what I intended to do, and let me just give a bit of personal background. I've been involved in setting up a non-profit organisation called Social Ventures Australia, which was something that I started in February 2002. And it's after a personal journey where I worked at Macquarie Bank for 15 years, enjoyed that, had a great run personally, professionally, financially. I was increasingly wanting to do other things with my time, and I wasn't getting the satisfaction out of my work life that I was looking for. So what I do, and I'm sure this is in this very informal setting, is talk through some of that, and maybe if there are conversations to be had around that, I'll be keen to get those views and other experiences. And the nature of what we're doing, and this was a big personal motivator for me, maybe for the people who come from a corporate background will connect to the same thing. That, behind the kind of two-dimensional ivory towers, there are a lot of people who are wrestling with this issue of how do we connect our head to our heart. The idea that there are things happening in the community that we feel strongly about, that in terms of what we do day to day, we don't necessarily get the opportunity to connect to our community. We don't necessarily get the opportunity we'd like to connect to our families. And that whole notion about how we wrestle with that and what we do with that has been something that's underpinned a lot of the work in Social Ventures. And just to give a very quick kind of 60-second headline view of what Social Ventures does, we're a venture philanthropy organisation. What does venture philanthropy mean? Venture philanthropy is about trying to use commercial venture capital disciplines in funding and supporting innovative social programs. And that's as a point of connection for me, the business I was involved in, co-founding Macquarie, was a private equity business. We invested in emerging and early stage companies. And the idea of what we did was, could you identify outstanding commercial entrepreneurs, fund them, make money out of it? But what I enjoyed about that journey was this incredible learning experience in the 45 companies that we worked with and invested in learning what make good managers, bad managers, what make good businesses, bad businesses. And the whole idea of what I got to a point where I wanted to see what other opportunities were outside of the commercial world, so that challenging what Social Ventures Australia does is, can we identify in the same way as we're trying to identify commercial entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs? You know, people who are seeing the landscape a little differently in terms of community and driving and creating innovative programs. And I thought it might be helpful. I'll share some of those stories, because certainly what's a powerful motivator for me is the privilege and opportunity that we get at SBA to connect to and work with people who we think are changing the social map. And just in terms of very quick maths, we've raised over $5.5 million. We use that to fund, it's now 17 innovative social programs. And what's really been working in the last 3 or 4 years, which has been fantastic, is that we run these community mentor programs where people from business backgrounds use their kind of business left brain skills in helping work with some of the organisations that they can support.
So that's your own program, so you sort of put a program on top of you're supporting other people's programs.
Yeah, that's right. So the structure, we support these innovative ventures, and
part of the support is this mentor.
Correct.
Okay.
You know, sort of we might back an outstanding entrepreneur running a great arts program, that's doing great things in the community, and connect somebody who can provide relevant business expertise. What I was going to do is just share some of the kind of personal journey and story, because I think on both sides of the fence, if I can put it that way, people think about this idea of connecting head and hearts as being, in some cases, a bridge too far. And how do you know, I know I wrestle with that. I've done some things in the community sector, but I really wasn't that engaged, and I really didn't know what was going on in the organisation. So it occupied maybe 2 or 3% of my time, and I loved it, and I was passionate about it. The truth was, I really wasn't sure how much impact I was having. So, personal story. This is something I've done, which I find I get a very interesting response to. I ask people to just think a bit about where you were when you were 7, 8, 9, and just cast your mind back for a second and who you hung out with, who you played with, school, parents, who you grew up. Just think about that for a second. So, where were you? That's where I was. That's my dad. He coached my footy team. That's me. Actually, I should have asked if anybody could guess who I was. I've aged very gracefully, really. I grew up in Morwell, in country Victoria, and the thing about that picture, it tells a lot about me. And when people say, "Who are you?" In 15 years at the bank, you were an executive director at Macquarie Bank, but I was Michael Traill. I was an 8-year-old kid who grew up in country Victoria in Morwell, and Dad coached the footy team. And there was a close sense of community in the place that I remember growing up in. And I think that stuff doesn't leave people. You know, it's that old Jesuit saying, "Show me the boy at 7 and I'll show you the man." And the interesting thing is, when I do this and talk to, I did this at I don't know if anybody's heard of the War Presidents Organisation, WPO. I had to say this carefully because there's a lot of nice people in that group. But at one level, it's this group of very rich, very senior people who are inclined to take themselves incredibly seriously. Some of them are a bit up themselves, really. And when you do this, you can see that it strips away the BS. You know, it's like, this is who I am, where I came from. So that was always part of the game for me. And I get asked a lot, you know, so 15 years at the bank and then you go and do this non-profit thing. What's the story? The story personally was that, which is why the footy picture is so relevant. I love sport, complete sports addict. We had the privilege of taking all the family down to see the Swans win their first grand final since 1934, and it was huge. It was huge. When I grew up playing footy, I coached, I umpired, I played footy in Victoria. It's a passion. And we've got 3 kids, and when our eldest was old enough to start playing footy, Aussie rules, guess what he played? No, I had nothing to do with it. We gave him a choice of sports, but he played Aussie rules and I coached his team. I love coaching his team. That'll tell you a bit about why I love coaching his team. That is for me. And I'm at a point at Macquarie Bank where I've been working there for 12 or 13 years. We hit all the buttons. We started life with a $50 million fund. We did reasonably well out of that. We raised a $103 million fund, and we just raised a $220 million fund. And we were working on a due diligence, which is a proposed investment in a company that was a company some of you might have heard of called Repco, automotive parts manufacturer. And it was a big deal. It was like a $20 million investment. And I suspect I'm not the only one in the room. When the kind of headlights are on and you're passionate about something, whether it's art or your work or whatever it is, you wake up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock with this nervous, passionate energy. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt because you want to, but you're excited. So when I'm working on Repco, I'm coaching the Wallaby Wildcats at the same period of time, very underrated force in the North Shore. And I woke up at 6 o'clock and I'm thinking about this kid who was one of the kids in Christopher's team, cracker little kid called Paddy. And he's one of those kids who's just enormous, prodigious athletic talent, but he was having real problems at school. His dad was telling me he was playing in truant at school, which is a pretty big call for a 10-year-old kid. So Paddy, and he's all sorts of issues, dyslexia, low self-esteem, but he loves footy, bloody good football, so he feels good about his footy. And that makes me feel pretty good. But he'd been quiet for a couple of weeks, so I woke up at 6 o'clock and I'm thinking, I played Paddy in the forward line, maybe what I'm going to have to do is move him to ruck rover. And so I go back to sleep and I woke up and I thought, what were you thinking about? You're going to the board next week with this $20 million investment. You don't think about that at all. and it put me in this space where I'm thinking, mate, there's another message going on. And the message was, what do I really want to do with myself? I actually wasn't passionate. I was bored with what I was doing commercially. I could look ahead at it. I was then, my wife would have called it a classic midlife crisis, and she'd be pretty right. I was looking ahead at the next 10 years and thinking, well, I can do more of this and make more money. But I'm waking up at 6 o'clock thinking about Paddy. So I went into this sort of space for that weekend where I'm thinking about a lot of things, and it was I'm actually kind of a artistic cripple. For some reason, our daughter's got these recessive art genes, which is fantastic. And she did this. And this kind of captured where I was at, which is this notion of what life's about. And sticking with the footy analogy, for those of you who follow AFL, you know that at half time, if you're 12 goals 6, you're in pretty good shape, and if the opponent's 2 goals 7, you're kicking their butt. And I was thinking, well, from a work point of view, I'm ticking a lot of boxes, doing well, making money, all that sort of stuff. But the Paddy thing was a purpose thing. It's like, I don't know that I actually really want to be doing this anymore. And that crystallised personal thinking about who I was and what I really wanted to be. And I ended up, for those of you who had anything to do with Macquarie Bank, there is a stereotype about Macquarie Bank which is a bit overdone, but it's not a place that takes the idea of taking your foot off the accelerator lightly. And I went to 4 days a week, and the idea of taking a day a week was, can I kind of think a bit more about this purpose thing? Don't know what I'm going to do, but the conclusion of the Paddy story was, it's not going to be more of just chasing deals like Repco. There's got to be some other stuff out there.
How did that go down?
It was a much tougher decision than jumping ship to go to social ventures, which was interesting. The idea of, it's a statement in that environment which I'd been part of, and I'm very competitive and I like to win, and I'd been part of that game for a long period of time. So the statement of, actually, I'm not sure that I want to play in the same
Actually, we might not be you.
Yeah. So it was confronting. I must say that in terms of David Clark, who hired me at the bank as the chairman, is a good guy and was very supportive. But as I said to him, for those who know a little bit about Macquarie and David, he does have quite a good work-life balance. He's got a range of interests around arts and culture and footy, and so I said to David, mate, you're half-time, you can't tell me I can't take a day off for work. So there were pockets of support in some areas, but it was a statement. And in that space, there was one of the extraordinary things I've had the opportunity to do, and I can frame this better now than I could then, but a guy that has been a deep mentor. It's a privilege to regard him as a personal friend. Is a guy called Norman Drummond, who's an executive. Spirit of Success. Yeah, he's written a very popular book called Spirit of Success. And Norman's CV is a sort of a mix of. He was headmaster of a very established private school in Edinburgh at the age of 33. He's a Queen's chaplain in Scotland. He was the chairman of the BBC. He's an executive coach. He set up a non-profit leadership academy on the Isle of Skye. Extraordinary guy and an inspirational guy. And his thing is that, and we've worked with him in Australia, and I want to share a story on this issue about Macquarie. We had a thing that Norman ran, which was a Spirit of Success one-day workshop, which was quite experimental. We had 10 or a dozen people from Macquarie Bank, a lot of whom were colleagues of mine who were executive directors, and 10 social entrepreneurs. You know, people like Jack Heath, for example, who's an old university mate of mine, set up a wonderful organisation called Inspire that uses web-based internet communication to connect to young people at risk of suicide. So, you know, Steve Lawrence is chief executive of Workbenches, which provides work opportunities to the long-term unemployed. So the kind of Macquarie Bank exec directors and social entrepreneurs. And in the course of this day, what Norman did, which I think gets to the power of this opportunity that exists, is he framed what he calls 3 questions. And he tells stories as he does, and then get a Jack Heath from Inspire to co-coach and connect to Guy Headley, who's head of private banking at Macquarie. And his first question is, who are you? And the who are you is not I'm an executive director, it's I grew up in Moore, I'm a kid, this is what matters to me in terms of my values. Really interesting conversation. And then the second question is, why are you living and working the way you currently are? Back into the conversational group. So you look at a Guy Headley and a Jack Heath having that sort of conversation. Why are you living and working the way you currently are? And the responses are really quite, you're starting to scratch something. So the Macquarie Bank people are saying, well, you know, I enjoy what I'm doing. You know, at some point I need a couple of private school fees to pay, and, you know, we're paying, but need a bigger house, holiday house. But at some point I'm going to do something a little different. And the Jack Heath says, well, I'm doing what I'm doing because there's a strong incidence of depression in the family, and I lost a nephew in suicide, and I figured I had to do something about it. Jack's a lawyer, he works for Keith's office, and so he said, well, I'm doing what I'm doing because I feel passionate about it. I wake up every day feeling like I can actually leave some sort of footprint. I'm inspired about the people that I get to connect to. And then the third question, so at this point you're seeing these very different conversations happening, very different conversations. And the third question is, well, what do you really want to do for the rest of your life? Now, at this point, Jack will say, well, I can't imagine doing anything different. And for the Macquarie Bank people, and for me that weekend when I'm thinking about Paddy and the footy, that was the question. It's like, what do you really want to do for the rest of your life? And those 3 questions, which come through in Norman's Spirit of Success, I think are enormously powerful. I mean, we had the most bizarre day, because when Norman came out to this Macquarie Bank day, it was really a big experiment. I had people I thought I knew pretty well from Macquarie saying, man, I don't know where you got this guy from, but, you know, I'm having conversations that I haven't had since I drank 48 beers at uni 20 years ago, and it feels pretty healthy. Very interesting. So I think there's a lot of this stuff out there, and the stuff that we connect to, and I'll come to some of the work that we do, because if you can trap and catch that...
Can I just make a point? He asked a very different question to the one that you said. What might you yet become and do with your life, rather than what do you really want to do?
That's a good pick up. I misquoted it. That is a different question, and it's more about what might you yet become.
It's got nothing to do with what you're necessarily doing.
Yeah.
Did you invite Norman Drummond to set up that workshop?
Yeah, we do a series of things with Norman, but that Spirit of Success workshop where he encourages people to think about, as Norman frames it, it's about people trying to get their headlights on.
And it didn't necessarily require people from those different walks of life. It made it more powerful if they were together, but it could have just been in-house Macquarie.
It could have been in-house Macquarie. Our experience has been, and it comes back to the work that we do, is that where people are wrestling with this, and it goes back to something that was a big motivator for me, which was, if I go to somebody and say, and they're busy Macquarie banker working at Lend Lease, whatever, and it's somebody who's got a social conscience and is thinking about these things. And a lot of people do. They really do. When I say, would you be interested in working with an organisation that's doing some really innovative, smart things that are changing the map? And would you be prepared to spend time with an organisation, with a social entrepreneur who might make you think a little differently about who you are in the world? And would you be prepared to give them some time so that they can use some of the skills that you've got that they don't around marketing, strategy, finance? Would you be up for that? And the answer is profoundly yes. And in fact, the biggest issue for us is this kind of, there's a huge supply of people who want to do that. And actually the whole process of our mentor program, frankly, the biggest organisational issue we have is that, it's the python swallowing the pig. If you go and have a conversation in corporate land and say, this is the opportunity, you get knocked over in the rush, which tells us something to do. But we know when this works. We ran pilot programs with AMP and Dimension Data, which is a $500 million IT company, last year, and it was very interesting. I mean, to give you a flavour of what happened at AMP, we talked about what would AMP have been a terrific supporter of ours over a long period of time in different ways. But we spoke about this program. Andrew Moll, who's the chief executive, was there. A lot of his direct reports. There were 30 people in the room, and so the leadership thing was very important in that. And he said, look, this is entirely on a voluntary basis and up to you, but we're paying for it. If you think this is something that resonates and makes sense, we would like to support you. 18 of the 30 people signed up. And from that group, we had a 2-day induction workshop, which is a lot of this stuff. What do you really want to do? A lot of practical guidance around the issues and the challenges of getting engaged in a different world and using your skills and listening and learning, and not going in there and saying, right, we're going to fix this organisation. Strategy, sort out finances. A lot of the things that we've learned, the patience and the effort required to build the relationship and allowing the relationship to evolve. We had the evaluation, the 12-month evaluation of those programs has just been finalised. And what comes out of it, which confirms what anecdotally we see, is that people are seeing themselves a little differently. They're saying, and I was hoping the technology could work, we had some quotes on a DVD from a very senior woman at AMP who's been involved in working with an organisation called Pathways to Manhood. I have a particular bias on that because it's a father-son rite of passage program, essentially, set up by a doctor who's got sick of seeing young people coming to his practice, boys, transitioning from happy, energetic 8 and 9-year-olds to depressed, sometimes suicidal 13, 14, 15-year-olds. So what's going on? I'm dealing with the symptoms, not the cause. And he felt very strongly, based on a fair amount of homework and lateral thinking, that as a WASP culture, we're quite unique in not having a rite of passage program that recognises the difficulty of that transition, that recognises the power of men and boys sharing stories, that recognises disconnecting father-son relationships in today's world. And so, and I've been on it with my then 13-year-old son, and it was a profoundly moving journey for both of us over a week of camping in the bush with other sons and fathers or boys who didn't have a dad. And camping, no grog, vegetarian, no mobile phone, no reading material, all back to basics. We shared stories. Just shared stories. The only rule in the camp is you can't lecture and you can't tell people what to do. But if you want to share a story about who you are and what you're doing, and like I was on the program with a bunch of, I suppose, kind of peers or colleagues from this sort of world, and body language is this kind of stuff at the start. By the end of it, we're all changed. We're all changed. So when you get an opportunity, as it occurs through our mentor program, people who connect and see that, get that, they get the culture of that, they learn deeply from that, and they get a huge thrill out of feeling that they can actually contribute some of their commercial and business skills to an organisation with that sort of quality and integrity. And we know what's happening because it's coming back in the feedback that we see that those mentors are going back into their organisations and they're treating people differently, they're managing differently, and they're listening, they're doing things that they wouldn't have done. And when you see that happen, there's a bit of magic in that, there really is. But as I said, one of the organisational challenges and frustrations for us is that to do that three-dimensional mentoring really takes effort. It takes leadership within organisations for that to happen. But when it happens and when it works, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So, I'm conscious of the time. I think I'm going to be out of here at 12:30. This has been
There's no one else coming, is there?
There's no one else coming. I mean, this is such a fabulous session.
So it feels
Are
like
you
a
allowed
fairly
to, is he
informal
allowed to
ramble,
just
but-
do a farm and how you got from the 4 days a week to SBA? There's a sort of huge leap there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm kind of heads in this space where I'm using a day a week to try and think and do different things. And I got an email from a friend, and it contained a job ad for looking for somebody with a venture capital background and a social conscience to do this social ventures initiative thing. And it was somebody who's actually godmother to one of our daughters, who, by the way, was the SBA mentor of the year last year. Extraordinary person, wonderful person. And she just sent this email and it said, Traill, you've got your name on this, go and talk to them.
So they were established.
So it was an idea, and I certainly can't take any credit for the idea. It was an idea that was the product of thinking from Rob McLean, who was the managing partner of McKinsey in Australia, Jane Schweiger, who was then chief executive of the Benevolent Society. The Smith family workbenches were involved. And I certainly took risks in doing what I was doing and jumping ship, but I'm also conservative as well. And I thought one of the attractions of this was there were such heavyweight, credible people involved that I've always made life decisions on the basis of if you're given an opportunity to do something and you don't take it, if you think there's a chance you'll regret it in 6 months, you actually have to do it. You have to do it because you can, to an extent, always go back to what you've done before. And when I started the conversations, and I knew the headhunter was a guy called Ashley Stevenson from Egon's, and he's a lovely guy. I'd had 2 or 3 rounds of conversations, and I was thinking, I'm going to be so pissed off if somebody else gets this job. That sounds really exciting. So that was it. And so I started on February the 4th, 2002. The only thing I knew, and I was nervous about a lot of things, but the one thing I wasn't nervous about was that I knew that there'd be a bunch of people, really, really good quality people, who get what this was about. And while we'd kind of work it out as we went along, that if you get people to think about this power of connecting head and heart, and back to that thing about if given an opportunity, would you like to engage and do that? And we just had unbelievable support, and we've grown. We've now got 14 people working in the organisation, and this incredible support network of what we do. One of whom's with us, Lisa Cotton, who'd be typical that Lisa was the director of DDB Needham. She's had a range of incredibly senior roles in marketing and PR, and knows. And I had one of those conversations with Lisa, who's given us a range of kind of huge amount of pro bono mentoring support, which is one of those classic pick your brain. Lisa, I'm really thinking about how we're going to try and go the next step. And who do you think might be interested in this? And she said, well, this actually sounds pretty appealing. And so that Lisa's engagement has been just fantastic for us. A big part of what we now do is, as we're trying to crack a high level of funding to support what we do. So the whole message is around the funding, mentoring tools, and how we communicate more effectively, which has underpinned us raising close to $5.5 million. Wouldn't have happened if we had somebody like Lisa on there. And in the same way, you look around at the people that we've got, it's people who are partner track, senior level, wanting to do something. It's back to that, exactly Norman's question 3. It's been extraordinary.
I'll have to squeeze in one more personal question. Do you mind me asking how much impact did the fact that you have probably had a good chance to make a reasonable amount of money in your corporate life have on your decision to leave? Do you think it would have been different had you been a clerk at Macquarie Bank earning 60 grand?
It's a good question.
I don't think the calling's different, but I just wonder whether the action.
I don't think the calling's different. No, look, I'd have to say, I'm continually inspired by people who connect to us in their late 20s or early 30s who wouldn't have had 10 years of the sort of earnings that I've had.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, we've got 3 kids, quality of life, and all of that sort of stuff is part of the equation. So it was certainly a factor.
Yeah.
But equally, I see in what we do that magnet of, my only regret in what we do and what I did is I didn't do it earlier. The truth is I was bored for the last 3 or 4 years at the bank. So I just have this huge respect and admiration for people, and a lot of them work with us, who are saying, no, bugger this. I can't get this, I'm going to move now. It's actually profoundly not about the money. It is profoundly not about the money. And I said that was one of the things for me. I look ahead to people in their good people, you know, in their mid-50s, 60s who've made a shitload of money. And a lot of them have made money. And I just thought, you know, you don't want to get to 50 and die wondering about that stuff. That if you've got some energy and passion about something, why wait? Why wait? And you know, the interesting thing, when Lisa and I talked to heavyweight, very wealthy funders, you can see kind of a light goes on in a lot of cases, and it's not just an admiration, respect thing. There's there's this tinge of, God, I wish I'd done something like that.
Can I just
sorry.
throw in a question after you say one or two key projects and outcomes you've achieved with them? Could you just...
Yeah, so just to stick with Pathways to try and demonstrate what it is we're doing. So here's an organisation where Anna Rubinstein, who founded, is a doctor, GP, and Anna will say, I'm running great programs. The global headquarters for Pathways is at Mullumbimby. When we first met them, I think they had about 1.5 people on the payroll and enough funding for about 2 weeks. Anna says, I know I'm running a brilliant program because I can see I'm changing lives and how people connect with my father, sons, related. I know this is working, but I'm not a business guy. You know, how do I scale this? How do I get funding? How do I be strategic? How do I become a chief executive? Wind the clock forward 3 years, that program has grown to a national organisation. We sponsored Anna to do a week-long non-profit strategic perspectives leadership program at Harvard Business School, which is fantastic. They've diversified their funding base. They have funding from ABN AMRO, from Macquarie. They've got program and infrastructure funding that enables them to plan 3 years ahead, not just kind of this hand-to-mouth program funding assistance week to week. So when that stuff works, that whole idea of helping an organisation build national scale and leave a footprint that the quality and integrity of the program suggests it should be doing, that's what we do.
And that's what you do, or what your mentors?
A mix of all of the above. It's a mix of all of the above.
Yeah, well, that was, for me, that was so much more than I knew we were going to get. And it's so fabulous when a real, authentic human being stands up and shares a story like that. It's inspirational for all of us. And one of the things that I am most glad about is that when people like you, who have the corporate background, who have the confidence, who have the connections, go out there and make a difference, they have so much more horsepower to achieve the sort of outcomes that other people might wish they could achieve, but they don't have the body language, they don't know the language, they're just not capable of doing that sort of thing. So this is a real celebration, and I'm so proud of you. And may it go from strength to strength. Thank you very much for sharing that.